George Tsilis, Senior Markets Correspondent. George, we're talking First Solar. I kind of wanted to discuss this one just because of the parabolic move that we've seen over the last month or so. And that's based on the fact that AI demand for energy is starting to explode right now. First Solar seems to be in a good spot, but it's also, maybe based on the fact that tariffs are coming down the pipeline for a lot of these Chinese suppliers, right?
Yeah, I think the first thing with First Solar is if you just look at the solar industry as a whole. I mean, this company is just moving parabolic to the upside, where a lot of the other companies like SunPower, for instance, or Sunrun, Symbol Run, they're down significantly, and I think there's a huge divergence going on when it comes to the solar industry, in particular First Solar, which actually is a supplier more in the commercial and industrial and the utility scale solar areas of the electricity ecosystem versus residential. The residential solar markets, I think, have been really susceptible to obviously imports, which are competing down the price of solar panels, and then at the same time, interest rates and the cost of housing and even just getting in a home now is difficult, let alone installing solar panels. So I think that's becoming a back burner purchase for homeowners, and that's why we're seeing this huge divergence with the aspects of First Solar moving higher, because their focus is mostly on the utility grade and the industrial sector for the solar business. And I think that speaks to, very stable revenues and, in fact, earnings. And one of the things I noticed about this company, I talked about it with Nicole on Trading 360 a couple months ago. After the earnings coming up in May, there was a huge gap and go, and the stock was only trading around 13 times earnings about a month and a half ago. Now it's around 20 times, because in the last 30 days, the stock is higher by 39%. So I think what we've actually seen is two things. One, there's obviously high demands for electricity because of enterprise data and artificial intelligence. The utility companies are using taxpayer funds, so they're not worried about how they're spending money, and they're spending it on installing solar utility, and even solar farms utilize First Solar's technologies. And I think the valuation was very compelling going back about 30 days ago. And I think there's still some gas left in the tank. And even if you look at some of the analysts like BMO, they actually increased their price target, maintaining an outperform rating of $311.
George, the secondary story about AI and the need for energy and what it's done to utilities and what it's done to some of these energy stocks in general, I get that story. But is this a bridge to nowhere? Can really solar deliver enough energy to sustain these companies? And you're right, if there's going to be a solar winner, it's going to be First Solar, because they make the more durable, heavier, better panels. But George, is this the first choice for energy, or is this just kind of a story that we're thinking about that may never come to fruition?
So it's a good question. The answer to the question is no. Obviously, solar is not going to be sufficient to cover all the needs for energy or electricity. But there's obviously a lot of political money that's moving into solar investments, particularly at the utility level. And so, with that said, this is a company that's capturing it. And for whatever reason, I haven't looked into it too deeply because I can't, but this company is generating quite a bit of profits. The other thing is their earnings growth, and this may be based upon some long-term contracts that this company secured with major utility providers. But if you look at the earnings, just to give you some context here, this year, $13.60. You go into next year, 2025, they're expected to earn almost $22. So with that said, they have a tremendous amount of earnings growth and even sales growth, which is over 25%. So this is a growth company, and it's in the utility space. It's a solar company that's doing well because they seem to have secured long-term contracts with major installations. And I'm wary about the residential solar market. I think that's going to be an area of weakness. Consumers and homeowners don't have pricing power and negotiating power, especially with those panels, particularly being eroded away because of competition. But you look at the solar array technologies. It's not just the panels, it's all the technologies that increase the yield on those large solar farms. And First Solar also integrates that in software with their technology.
Yeah, Goldman Sachs put out a note. They said 8% of total U.S. consumption by 2030 will be going into data centers and artificial intelligence. So the need for power is out there, George. But real quick, if you look at this is about the tariffs too, because the U.S. government's not going to allow China to continue to dump their cheaper products here, right?
Definitely. So that's the other story behind this as well. That's another catalyst for First Solar. I mean, obviously, this news has created some pickup because you're looking at, companies like SunPower and Sunrun, which are focused more on the residential side. They're also getting slight bids to the upside because of expected tariffs. But, those are companies that are not profitable. So my thoughts are that won't play out in the long run for those other companies. So you got to stick with the best of breed. And this, at least in my view, having looked at multiple companies, is the one because of the fact that they're very profitable. But lastly, I'll say this is, stocks tend to follow the Pareto rule, which is an 80-20 rule. Stocks will make 80% of the move and 20% of the time. So one would say having gone up, 39 to 40% in 30 days means that maybe that move is played out. So we may end up seeing a stationary price action in First Solar in the next, a couple months or so.
Yeah, it seems like over the last week and a half, it's topped out from those multi-year highs.
Yep.
All right, great stuff. Thanks to George Tsilis, Senior Markets Correspondent here, breaking down First Solar.